What's happening, guys? Welcome to Let's Talk Comics, and today I want to talk about Comics the Magazine. Now, I have to admit that when I saw there was going to be another physical comic book magazine coming out, I was quite surprised by that. I really felt like in 2026, there's really not a place for physical magazines anymore. Anything that you want to read about, any news, by the time it comes out in the magazine, you've already learned about it through social media. So, I don't really get what they are trying. I didn't really see the appeal of it. I guess they were trying to piggyback, capture some Wizard magazine nostalgia. So that's the only reason I can think of as to why it was launched. So I picked up the first issue and thumbed through it. I didn't particularly care for it, and picked up issue number 3 because it's got the Ninja Turtles on the cover by Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman. And I'm a big Turtles fan, so I thought that was really cool. So I figured I'd give the magazine another shot and kind of talk about pros and cons of what I liked and didn't like about it. Now, $2.99 price point, I do like that. That's a great price point right here. But if you'll look at it, it's paper thin, man. This magazine is very, very thin. There's nothing to it or whatever. So although the price point is low, it's a small magazine overall. There's not much to it. So we open it up. We've got some letters here. Some stuff. Letter from the magazine where they talk about Darker Image and the passing of Sam Keith. We've got an interview with Kevin Eastman, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle co-creator. A letters page right here from looks like one. We got two letters here. So that's very, you got a throwback ad here for the Ninja Turtles, one of their first published ads for the book. That's pretty cool. Then we have something here called Dollar Bin Kings. And I guess here they're talking about, cool stuff you find inside the dollar bins. That's cool or whatever. And they're talking about the Cable #1 from John Romita Jr. and Fabian Nicieza. And then here they've got a conversation with the current writer and the editor for the Ninja Turtles book. But like I said, there's some cool stuff in here, some interviews, but a lot of the interviews and stuff like that is just really kind of chalk stuff. Nothing that really gives you anything that you didn't already know if you're a long-term fan or if you're someone who, there's tons of this stuff online. You can easily find all this information about the Ultimates line and the history of Heroes Reborn. You can find all this stuff online. Here's an article with interview with somebody from Bad Idea. And then what do we have here? Amazed and Delighted. Interview with another creative. We have another little write-in section right here. Comics counselor with 7 years of podcasting experience and no formal qualifications. Lisa Gillickson of Comic Book Couples Counseling bravely answers your lifestyle questions as long as they have something to do with comics. So this is just basically like a Dear Abby section, but with comics or whatever. Like I said, that's okay, I guess. Nothing really groundbreaking there. Some stuff right here about the Comic Book Chew. Then we have some more stuff here of a book that just came out from Image. If Destruction Be Our Lot. So a little advertisement for that and an interview with the creators. Little art section here from accomplished artists. Comics the Magazine picks comics. So then we just have some like reading magazines about comic books isn't enough. You want to read actual comics? Let us recommend which ones to buy in May. So you just kind of have some recommendation stuff right here. You know, that's okay. There's, like I said, so far there's nothing, and this is what my main contention of the magazine was. You know, so far everything we've seen is nothing that you can't get off social media. You know, whether it be Facebook, a Facebook group, you know, Discord server or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. This right here, the power rankings, I just found this some of the most absurd things that I've ever seen. And there is no pull box power rankings. There's no reality out there in which Amazing Spider-Man is the #1 book over Absolute Batman or DC, Marvel, Superman, Spider-Man. You know, I don't get where they get this information from. I mean, I get, they say later on, they say down here that these power rankings are based on pre-order and subscription data from over 60,000 consumers across more than 500 comic shops. This ranking is compiled from single issue comic sales data gathered by whatever that is. So basically they're saying if they're taking up all the shop data, the pull list, and that's how they come up with these rankings. And I got to say, that's a bunch of bullshit. You know, that's a bunch of bullshit, you know. So you're telling me that Ed McGuinness, who I like and is a great cover artist, you know, he's a great cover artist and an interior artist. You know, I love his stuff. I loved his stuff on Superman, Batman book. You know, and when he got his start on Deadpool, been a fan since then. But there's no way that man is #4 over Hayden Sherman or, you know, Raphael Sandoval, ever had a Sandoval, you know. I don't get any of this. And then top 10 publishers, DC, yeah, that's very accurate. I feel like DC is the #1. You know, they've got a lead over Marvel right now based upon the power of, you know, the Absolute books and everything that DCKO. Nick Dragotta is the #1 cover artist out there right now. You know, I don't know how exactly true that is. Yes, he does do covers for Absolute Batman, but there's a lot of people, you know, Dan Moore is just as strong. But they said it's all, and it's funny that they have Dan Moore. They have the bear from the Beneath the Trees series, when that's not anything that Dan Moore is remotely known for. You know, he's known more for The World's Finest books and, you know, a handful of other DC things, not Beneath the Trees. So that was very quizzical. And then they have top 10 interior artist Eric Kante. He's only on here because he did a fill-in for Absolute Batman. You know, and that issue flew through the roof. There's no reality is Jorge Jimenez or Hayden Sherman in the year of our Lord 2026 secondary to Eric Kante, ever had that's pronounced. You know, so this is all just these. I get it. This is all to just probably stir up conversation, which that's very. Dan Moore is #5. Come on. You know, Dan Moore, Jorge Jimenez, Hayden Sherman, Nathan Diaz, they blow Eric Kante out of the water. You know, like I said, he's only here because Absolute Batman sells so much. And then top 10 writers, Scott Snyder's being #1. Yeah, I can see that. He's selling books right now. Kirkman, you know, based upon the power of Transformers, he's on there. It's not like Kirkman is better than Fraction or Jason Aaron or Kelly Thompson or whoever. You know, all these top 10 lists right here are 100%, you know, skewed and totally, you know, totally just made up or whatever. What's that phrase? You know, 80% of statistic. You know, you can have a statistic that says 80%, and I can come up with another statistic that says 90% or something like that. So I guess this is someone plugging their shop or whatever it is, which that's cool. You know, you want to get your shop out there and you want to have people come and check you out. So it's a good way to advertise. But all in all, I just don't see the appeal for a physical magazine in 2026, and especially one that is really trying to be Wizard with the top 10 list, and they're trying to emulate Wizard. That's to emulate Wizard with the top 10 list is the wrong thing to try to choose, you know, because we all know that those lists didn't make any sense, and they were just promos for companies that Wizard was sleeping in the bed with, you know. So, like I said, Comics the Magazine, I don't really see the point of it. You can get all this information you need off social media. The value for a $3 book isn't really here because there's nothing in there you can't find anywhere else for free. And, you know, the stuff they do hang their hat on, you know, the big topic for discussion stuff as far as top writers and artists is totally inaccurate. And it's just cherry-picked data, so to speak. But, you know, a lot of people need something to read while they're in the bathroom. So, and you don't want to take the risk of dropping your phone in the toilet. I get it. So if you're looking for something cheap to keep around the house, Comics the Magazine is right here. So till next time, talk to you guys later. Have a good day. Bye-bye.